Welcome, all my fellow Washington brethren and sisters. I am your man and resident Washington football team fan, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on the Washington Football Report. Week number 2 of voluntary OTAs. The key word being voluntary, as Chase Young is not there and people keep trying to make a big deal out of it. Yeah, most of the team is there. Probably like 95% of the team is there, but Chase is not there, and Jonathan Allen was not there this week. It's voluntary. Who cares? I don't care. The only time I care about things like this, whether it's voluntary, involuntary, is if the guy in question has an issue with being in shape. Okay? If this were Albert Hainsworth and he didn't show up for voluntary OTAs, yes, that's a problem because he doesn't have a problem showing up at 360 pounds and out of shape. That's not the case. Chase Young is going to show up in phenomenal shape whenever he does show up. Same thing with Jonathan Allen. I don't care. Montez Sweat was there this week. He wasn't there last week. Not a big deal, okay? Not going to make it a deal because it's not a big deal. Let's talk about the guys that were there. That's, to me, what's more important. Let's talk about the guys that are there. Let's stop talking about people who aren't there. So, one of the biggest takeaways from week 2 of OTAs for me, and remember last week, the biggest takeaway was Troy Apke at cornerback getting reps there. They're trying to figure out if they can find a way to make this guy useful on the roster, essentially outside of special teams. So, he's got speed, he's got length, he's got size. Why not try him at corner and see what happens there? They haven't given up on him at safety, but they're definitely looking to extract any value out of him before they have to make the move of cutting him if they cannot get what they need out of him at the cornerback position. That said, that was one of the biggest takeaways last week because you're not going to get a lot out of OTA talk, okay? There's just not a lot going on. Everything is pretty much install and guys getting together, camaraderie, and getting, to work out a bit with some of the other fellows on the team. So there isn't a lot that you can glean from this. But one thing that we did learn this week, and I think it's the most important thing, is that Jamin Davis took reps at middle linebacker. Remember, when he was first drafted, the prevailing thought is, hey, this guy's going to start out as our strong side linebacker. He's going to be our Sam, and then we'll go from there. They didn't want to overload the young fellow, which is what Ron Rivera said in today's presser post-practice. But he said, look, we're putting stuff on his plate, and he seems to be digesting it pretty well. We've got him making calls in the huddle right now, getting acclimated to that. If he can get everything down, he's not going to take that next step to say, hey, if he can get all these things down, he'll be our starting middle linebacker. But I'm not saying, I'm just saying, I think they really want this kid to be their middle linebacker. That's what they drafted him to be. That would be great news because I think they would then move Cole Holcomb back to strong side, which is where he played last year. And I think you could see a guy like Khaleke Hudson maybe get some reps at weak side backer, or somebody else that they feel confident in being able to play the weak side backer position and play some will for us. Or they could leave Cole at will because remember the thought process when they drafted Jamin Davis and right after the draft, Ron comes out and says he's going to be playing some Sam for us is that, Cole's going to move over to weak. He's going to be playing the will. And John Bostic is going to be our Mike again. Hopefully, and fingers are crossed. Hopefully, Jamin Davis is the Mike. Cole Holcomb, it doesn't really matter. I think he's going to do a phenomenal job at either Sam or Will. But whatever one, he's going to be at one of them. And then I'd like what I saw out of Khaleke Hudson. Yeah, he's a little undersized. He's got a whole entire offseason to get bigger. He may put on some weight. I love the athleticism. And I love the spark he gave us off the bench last year and that that 2 or 3 week stretch where we didn't have Cole late in the season. And he was able to step in and give us some outstanding reps. I would love to see some more Khaleke Hudson, and then obviously you got some young guys on the roster. You see how they perform. But I think we could have something there. And Jamin Davis being at middle linebacker is a great sign that he's taking reps there now, getting acclimated to making calls in the huddle, getting everybody in line, because that's why they want Bostic in the lineup. Remember, last year when Bostic was playing horribly, all they kept saying is he's a great leader, He knows where everybody's supposed to be, gets everybody lined up. They were more concerned about him being able to get the other 10 players on the defense where they were supposed to be, get the call, spit out in the huddle in enough time so that they could line up, adjust to what the offense was doing, and be able to be in a position to play ball once the ball was snapped. That's why you want a veteran signal caller as your backer on the defensive side of the football so that there isn't any confusion. Everybody knows where they're supposed to be. And if they don't know, the middle linebacker is supposed to know where everybody's supposed to be. That's why they were comfortable with John Bostic, because he's a very smart guy and he knew exactly where everyone was supposed to be. You're asking a young, 21, 22-year-old to come in and be that kind of a presence on the defense. It's a lot to have that guy's stomach and ask him to do. But if he is what we think he is, which is a hard worker and a disciplined guy, comes from a military background, I don't think it's going to be that big of an ask to have him come in, learn the middle linebacker position where everybody's supposed to be, and have him be able to line everyone up. So I'm excited about hearing that he worked at middle linebacker. Again, it's OTAs. Don't run too far with anything you hear coming out of OTAs. Like Kyle Allen, for instance, running with the twos today behind Ryan Fitzpatrick. Taylor Heineke didn't have a helmet. We learned later as to why he got elbowed by a running back in walkthroughs. And I'm thinking to myself, look, man, the quarterbacks got on a red jersey a lot of times at camp, so you don't touch him. We can't even keep our guys safe in walkthroughs. What are we doing right now? How are we getting elbowed in the eye by a running back, carrying out a fake on play action fake? Like, come on, guys. Got to take care of our quarterbacks, man. Jesus. So that's rough to get. And he didn't just get hit in the eye and get a cut over his eye and, had it swell up a little bit and had some stitches. He said he lost a tooth, a piece of a tooth. And, this was a serious elbow, man. Damn. Did it start at the mouth and then work its way up to the eye? What are we talking about right now? So I don't know what the deal was there, but obviously he wasn't able to practice, which is fine. It's OTAs. Who gives a shit? The bottom line is Kyle Allen. The biggest takeaway for me wasn't Taylor Heineke wasn't working. The takeaway for me was the last week when they were out at OTAs, Kyle Allen was still on the side field. He wasn't able to work with the entire team. This week, he was able to work as the second team quarterback, able to take those reps that Taylor Heineke wasn't able to take. And the ankle must be getting to a point now where he is very comfortable working amongst the rest of his teammates. So I'm more excited about that. And that's the takeaway I had from Heineke not working, is that Allen was taking the second reps, not, some random quarterback like Jordan Ta'amu. And I get it, that was for rookies and guys that qualified to be at that rookie mini. But it wasn't some rando taking the snaps like Steven Montez taking the second team reps. It was Kyle Allen. So that lets me know he is healthy and getting back to where he needs to be as well. So that's a good sign when you look at it that way. Curtis Samuel and Sadiq Charles were both working on the side field. Speaking of side fields, and Kyle Allen working on the side field last week. Well, this week, it's Sadiq Charles and Curtis Samuel. Again, nothing to be alarmed about, except with Sadiq Charles. He's still, rehabbing from the surgery he had last season that ended his year. And while I'm like, yeah, nothing to be alarmed about, I'm like, this is a guy that really didn't play all the last season. So I am a little concerned when I hear that he's still not where he needs to be, because remember, it's not like he had postseason surgery. Sadiq Charles had surgery in season. The first Giants game. Remember, he got the start. He injured himself on the second play. He then had surgery shortly thereafter, because remember, we were holding out hope. I kept holding out hope. Maybe, just maybe, he'll be back. No, he had surgery. His season was done. That was probably early November, late October, because it was week number 9 when we played the Giants the second time. I think it was week maybe 5, 6 at the latest that we played the Giants the first time, and that's where he got the injury in the Meadowlands. So you're talking October, man. More likely than not, middle of October, late October. He should be fine, I would think. Again, I'm not the one having surgery, and I don't like to do that. I shouldn't do that. That's not fair. I want him healthy. That's bottom line is I want this guy healthy. I want him to have a chance to compete. I want to see what he's capable of doing. Ron said, look, don't count anybody out of any of these positions. He said, look, this entire offensive line could be in flux, essentially. He said, now, I don't want to go crazy and talk about every position's up for grabs because there are a couple that are spoken for. He didn't mention those positions, but we know which ones he's talking about. He's talking about center with Chase Roulier, and he's talking about left guard, or right guard, with Brandon Sheriff. Right tackle, open for business. Left tackle, open for business. Left guard, open for business. So the entire offensive line, at least 2/5 of it, is spoken for. 3/5 of the line, 60% of it, is going to see some type of change, okay? Which is more than we've seen in any season, any single offseason with the offensive line at one time in about 7 years. We haven't had 3 open positions. We've always had from center over to right tackle spoken for. No matter what was going on the left side, we've always had left side question marks after Trent Williams' departure. We've always had issues on the left side. But we've always been steady on the right side. Now we got a right tackle question mark. Now we got left tackle and left guard again. It seems like that's a question mark every year. We're hoping to solve that. But Ron said, don't count out Cornelius Lucas. Everybody wants to just pencil in Charles Leno Jr. He's like, don't do that. Don't count out the young fella, Sadiq Charles. He's working hard and having a good offseason so far. We'll see about that. Ron said the same exact thing about Sadiq Charles last year. He couldn't stay healthy. So that's the only thing I'm concerned about is like, hey, you're working off on the side field again. You're not fully healthy. Can we get you back healthy so that you can have a chance to help this football team? That's what I'm concerned about with Sadiq Charles. But he was off on the side field along with Curtis Samuel. I thought another interesting comment brought up, a question brought up to Ron was punt returns. That was an issue for this team last year, and they really haven't done much to address it. None of the guys that they drafted are natural punt returners. They didn't seem to love the in-house option that was available to them last year in Danny Johnson for some reason, even though I thought he did a really bang-up job when we had the injury to Steven Sims Jr. early in the season. And right before the bye week, I thought they put Danny Johnson back there against Dallas, and I think the week prior to that against the Giants, and I thought he was exceptional in both games, and I wanted to know why wasn't he getting more opportunities post-bye when Steven Sims came back. Once Sims started to struggle, why not put him back there again? They never did. So Ron was asked about the punt returning duties this year, and he named some names, and I'm like, hey, Ron, that's cool, but none of those dudes you just named, I think, have a realistic shot at making the roster. Like, he named the guy they signed from Carolina. I think he played with the Texans too, like something Carter, DeAndre Carter. I think his name is DeAndre Carter, if I'm not mistaken. He like DeAndre Carter, Steven Sims Jr., and he named Dax Milne as guys that can return punts. And I'm like, hey, that's cool. Dax has an outside shot, so does Steven Sims Jr. Ain't no way you just going to keep out of all these receivers. And I told you that's going to be the biggest battle in all of camp is for that sixth and final. It's probably more like the final 2 wide receiver spots. I contend that Antonio Gandy Golden is going to be on this football team, but I know a lot of you are like, to hell with him. Cam Sims is on this team. Gandy Golden is in the pile with all the rest of those dudes fighting for that last wide receiver spot. We could argue about that all day long, okay? Somebody's going to be the odd man out. A bunch of those guys are going to be odd men out. Steven Sims, I think, is going to be one of them. Dax Milne, we didn't draft him in the 7th round with the expectation of him making the team. Not to say that he won't, because he could. If he impresses enough and there's an opportunity there, who knows? But more likely than not, we drafted him for the practice squad, for him to learn behind Adam Humphries, for him to take over the slot next year. Okay? So I don't think Dax Milne is the answer. I don't think the Andre Carter is the answer, because you're not keeping this guy if he can't help on offense, on special teams, and not just in the return capacity. I'm talking about he's got to go down and make some tackles, all that good stuff, because he's not, to me, going to be a contributing factor on offense, is DeAndre Carter. So I think he's not going to be on this team And Steven Sims, I think, is a long shot. I'm not going to count him out. I know a lot of you have. I'm not writing him off completely. I think it is a very long shot that he makes his football team, but last year could be an aberration. Remember how big and how high I was on, Steven Sims, and how I tried to protect him from a lot of you last year when you guys were chomping at the bit to get at him with the pitchfork and the torch to get this guy off the roster. He's got talent. I've always said that. And I heard he's looked really good. He had a touchdown catch today. There are a lot of things that he did wrong last year. One was not being able to stay healthy, which is something that's out of his control. But he dropped the football. He muffed punts. He was inconsistent. He didn't do the things that we thought he was going to do, or at least I don't want to speak for any of you out there. I thought he was going to do last year. He's got a chance to make amends for that. And maybe, just maybe, he's able to weasel his way onto the roster. And having that punt return experience doesn't hurt. But again, what is in the back of Ron should be, I can't say it is, what should be in the back of Ron's mind is, hey, this is the same bastard we put back there last year that had issues fielding punts. I don't know if I can trust him to be back there again, because we know that's all psychological. If he's starting to struggle catching the football, is that going to bleed over into his punt return duties? I don't know. Worst case scenario, I want somebody back there shorthanded. Even because when's the last time we had a punt return for a touchdown anyway? Like, that just doesn't happen for us. So I'm not looking for something that I haven't had. I can't miss something that I haven't had. I mean, seriously, when's the last really good punt return we've had that either went for a touchdown or set up one? I can't tell you. You got to go all the way back to 2012 against the Ravens with Crawford. Like, seriously, what are we talking about here? I mean, we haven't had anything of note back there. Brandon Banks, maybe? So, I said all of that to say this. I don't think Ron knows what the hell we're going to do. And then he threw this out at the very end of that comment about punt return. Hey, we still have Danny Johnson, too, who did a phenomenal job filling in. And I'm like, really, Ron? Really? You're going to throw Danny Johnson in at the end? It's sort of like, hey, worst case scenario, if we got to cut all three of those dudes I just mentioned, we got Danny Johnson. Well, we had Danny last year and you didn't use him. So I'm still baffled by that. Anyway, he threw that last throwaway line in as to say, hey, we still got Danny Johnson. Worst case scenario, man. I got Danny in my back pocket. So I think he understands. I don't think any of those dudes are making the team. Danny Johnson may be the option that ultimately makes the most sense for us as a punt returner on this team, because I think Danny Johnson's going to make this football team. I told you guys that already, but I'm doubling down on that. Until somebody shows me something that makes me think, man, maybe Danny Johnson isn't making this roster. If he's healthy this camp in this offseason, I think Danny Johnson's going to ultimately be a part of this 53-man roster. But another question asked was about Steven Montez and his role potentially on this football team and how he could potentially fill, everybody, it's a copycat league, that everybody's looking for their Taysom Hill, a guy that could be, multifaceted, that can play quarterback, catch the football, do some things, throw a wrench in a defensive, game plan, so to speak, give him something else to think about. And, we talked about that this offseason, that he could be like a Swiss Army knife of sorts. And they were trying him at multiple positions, apparently, in this OTA period. And Ron just said, look, man, we got a bunch of guys out here that we're going to be trying to do a lot of different things. This is the time to do that. And he's one of those guys, because of last year with COVID and how you had to be so adaptable and had to be pretty much on the fly, have that flexibility to be able to move guys around. Steven Montez is one of the guys that he had COVID last year. He's got a COVID test, so he should be one of the guys that we can all but be assured of, which you can't be 100% sure, but like 98% sure that he's not getting COVID again. Worst case scenario, if we need him to fill in one of these other positions, he's one of the candidates to be able to do that, because we know he's going to be COVID free for the most part. Like Ron's like, COVID's not over. A lot of people were getting back to a little bit of normalcy, but COVID's not over. So, that was another thing brought up, but at the end of the day, I still don't see Steven Montez making this football team. But, that's something that they're throwing out there just to kind of get everybody, thinking about, hey, this is another guy that could potentially be a weapon for this offense. We'll see what happens there. I don't think much of it personally at this moment. So, OTAs week 2, everybody's excited. Brandon Sheriff spoke. I mean, how can you not like Brandon? I know a lot of you have turned on him. I keep telling y'all, he's in a position that if you were in, you would do the same thing he's doing, okay? Stop it. If your agent said, hey, look, you could take a deal this year, a long-term deal in Washington that will pay you $15, $16 million a year, or you could take $18 million this year and then turn around and sign that same deal that they were offering you this offseason next year. Well, or that deal goes up because his agent can say, look, we done signed for the franchise tag 2 years in a row. He made 18 last year. You asking him to essentially take a pay cut and come down to 16? Like, those would be the negotiations that take place. Bottom line is, if you were in the position he was in to make $18 million this year and then have another bite at the apple next year, you would do the same thing. So stop it. Bottom line is, I love Brandon Sheriff. You know, he is one of the elder statesmen on the team. He's embracing that role. He talked about taking guys out to dinner the other night and just getting to know these players. He talked about Samuel Cosme and how he jumped in with the deadlifts with him in the weight room. And he was like, who the fuck are you? And like, where the hell did you come from? Like, because Sam Cosme, as we all know, is a big, fast, strong kid. So he jumped right in with one of the stronger players on the team and said, hey, how many reps we doing? And Sheriff's like, whoa, you know, where'd this kid come from? So I love it, man. Everybody seems to be in a good headspace. The team is coming together, and that's what this time of the year is for. You know, building team camaraderie, and it's continuing to foster this excitement that we all have for the upcoming season. And we'll see what happens, man. As we get closer and closer, I get more and more excited. I can't speak for any of you guys out there, but in any event, that's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. Also, Jack Del Rio spoke quickly before we get out of here. Jack's a little bit more reserved than Ron is. Jack's like, look, if Ron wants to tell y'all that he can, I'm not saying anything. You know, Ron, I could tell that they have a little bit of a different philosophy on how much information should be divulged to the media. Ron's a little bit more willing to divulge information, whereas Jack's like, nah, y'all not getting that out of me. I'm sorry, I'm not talking about that. But he did say that, you know, Cameron Curl is a guy that they are excited about and that they're going to move him around. He's going to play multiple positions. He would not pinpoint exactly where because that's what Jack does, and I love that. But, you know, Antonio Gibson was another guy that was talked about, and Ron said he expects him to have a massive leap in year number 2. And Gibson spoke at the podium. He's still coming back from that toe injury. Remember, he had the toe late in the season. It's still not 100%. He did not have surgery. I don't blame him. If I can avoid surgery, I'm going to do that. That's what he's doing. So he's almost there. Not 100% though. He's getting there. And I think that guy has a chance to be huge this year. And he said, look, I'm a lot more comfortable than I was a season ago this time. There were no OTAs, so there was none of this for me last year. He said, I would love to have a much more expanded role in the pass game. He said, that's kind of up to me to be able to allow them to put more on my plate. And I think I'm getting to that point. So we could be seeing a lot more from Antonio Gibson this upcoming season. Only time will tell. But that's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. Remember, I am a Washington fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Washington spirit will never die. Washington spirit will never fold. Until we meet again, hail to our beloved Washington football team. We will be live tomorrow night for the Washington Football Report live. But until then, I'm your man, Louie T. And if nothing else breaks, I'll see you then. You guys take care, stay safe. Remember, get off the bench, get in the game, and kick it with me, your man, Louie T. Until next time, you guys have a good one. And if you haven't already done so, real quick, subscribe to the LouieTeeNetwork for more great content. Turn on your notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And hit that like button. See you tomorrow night.
LouieTeeNetwork.